Those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. This quote by Nietzsche captures the essence of his life and philosophy, a man who danced to the rhythm of ideas that few could understand, challenging what seemed unshakable in the world around him. But who was Nietzsche, this philosopher who divided opinions like few others? To some, he was a visionary genius who uncovered painful and liberating truths about humanity. To others, he was a provocateur who threatened the foundations of morality, religion, and Western culture. Nietzsche did not seek consensus. His mission was far more radical. He aimed to topple the idols he considered false, from the absolute truths of religion to the values that governed the society of his time. Born in 1844, in a Europe steeped in traditional Christian values and burgeoning industrialization, Nietzsche lived in a period of transition. Science was beginning to challenge religious narratives, while morality inherited from religion still formed the basis of society. Nietzsche not only rejected this morality but also called the culture sick, arguing that it stifled humanity's true potential. His proposal? A revolution in how we think, live, and exist. However, this boldness came at a cost. Nietzsche was labeled mad, immoral, and even dangerous. Over time, his ideas were distorted, used to justify everything from totalitarian ideologies to interpretations completely opposed to what he defended. But why did his ideas provoke such discomfort? Was he truly wrong, or was he hated for exposing truths that no one was ready to hear? In this video, we will delve into the brilliant and restless mind of Friedrich Nietzsche, his devastating critiques of morality and religion, and his bold vision for a new kind of humanity. Get ready to embark on a philosophical journey that promises no easy answers but profound questions. To understand Nietzsche, it is essential to grasp the world he faced, a period of profound transformations and contradictions. 19th century Europe stood on the brink of a cultural revolution. On one hand, Christian traditions were still the moral and spiritual foundation of society. On the other, the rise of science and rationalism was beginning to erode religious certainties. Nietzsche emerged as a dissonant voice in this scenario, rejecting both blind faith in religion and the naive optimism of scientific reason. The society of that time was still under the influence of the Enlightenment, which exalted reason as the key to human progress. The Industrial Revolution promised a more efficient and prosperous future, while Darwinism challenged biblical narratives about creation. For many, this created a sense of progress. For Nietzsche, however, this evolution concealed a crisis of values. He saw in scientism and Christian morality the same problem. Both sought to impose absolute certainties, denying the complexity and individuality of human life. Moreover, Nietzsche experienced a period of political and cultural tensions. The unification of Germany in 1871 brought a new nationalism, which he vehemently rejected. Nietzsche detested the authoritarianism and conformity he perceived in modern institutions, whether religious, political, or cultural. He viewed Christianity as a slave morality, promoting submission, guilt, and the denial of life in the name of a promise of redemption in the hereafter. In this context, Nietzsche's philosophy not only rejected the beliefs of his time, but also challenged the idea that universal truths existed. He believed that dominant values had been constructed to preserve the power of a few and limit human potential. His critique was not limited to religion. He attacked the concept of morality itself, questioning its origins and function. For Nietzsche, morality was not a matter of right or wrong, but rather of forces shaping life according to historical and social interests. This backdrop of collapsing beliefs and emerging new ideas was the battlefield where Nietzsche fought. While many sought security and comforting narratives, he embraced chaos, believing that only the destruction of old structures would allow humanity to reinvent itself. But what was the foundation of such fierce criticism? In the next chapter, we will delve into his most controversial work, The Antichrist, and understand why Nietzsche was so hated. In 1888, Nietzsche wrote one of his most provocative works, The Antichrist. The title alone was enough to scandalize. However, this was not a superficial attack on religion. It was a careful and relentless demolition of Christian morality, which he saw as a destructive force for human potential. To Nietzsche, Christianity not only failed to elevate the human spirit, but also perpetuated a slave morality based on resentment, guilt, and denial of life. Nietzsche believed that Christianity, by exalting values such as humility, submission, and sacrifice, created a culture of weakness. He contrasted these values with those of the ancient Greeks, who celebrated strength, beauty, and excellence. In his view, Christianity had inverted these values, glorifying suffering and demonizing ambition and power. This system, according to Nietzsche, was born out of the resentment of the weak, who could not compete with the strong and thus created a morality to justify their own condition. Nietzsche's attack on religion went beyond theology. It was philosophical. He saw the idea of God as a human invention to bring meaning to a chaotic and unpredictable world, yet in doing so, humanity renounced its responsibility to create its own values. The famous phrase, "God is dead," was not a celebration but a diagnosis. Nietzsche recognized that with the decline of religion, society would lose its moral compass and plunge into an existential void. To him, this void was both an opportunity and a danger. Without God, humanity would face the daunting task of creating meaning on its own. This devastating critique of Christianity and his proposal for a new morality made Nietzsche a deeply polarizing figure. He was labeled a nihilist, a charge he rejected. To Nietzsche, nihilism was the result of the collapse of old values, and his philosophy was an attempt to overcome it. However, the world was not ready for his ideas. Nietzsche's boldness was interpreted as arrogance, his critique as blasphemy. He was hated not only for questioning religion, but also for challenging the very foundation of Western culture. The price for his audacity was high: misunderstanding, isolation, and eventually madness. Among the most fascinating and misunderstood ideas of Friedrich Nietzsche is the concept of the Übermensch, or Superman. He is not a hero in the traditional sense, nor a being with extraordinary powers. The Superman is a metaphor for the next stage of human evolution, someone capable of transcending traditional values and creating their own. For Nietzsche, the Superman would be someone who lives without the need for God or moral absolutes. With the death of God, as announced by Nietzsche, humanity would face the void of a world without universal truths. While many would succumb to nihilism, the belief that life has no meaning, the Superman would be the one to transform this void into an opportunity for creation. He would be the artist of his own existence, creating values that affirm life instead of denying it. But what does this mean in practice? Nietzsche envisioned the Superman as someone who embraces their freedom with courage without resorting to comforting illusions. He does not seek approval or justification from something external, but finds meaning in his own existence. He accepts suffering and imperfection as part of life without trying to deny them. In his words, man is something that must be overcome. The Superman also rejects the morality of the herd, the conformity and submission to norms imposed by society. Nietzsche believed that most people lived under a morality that promoted mediocrity, keeping everyone equal instead of encouraging them to reach their full potential. The Superman breaks away from this morality, creating his own values, even if it puts him at odds with society. This concept, however, has been widely distorted over time. In the early 20th century, the idea of the Superman was mistakenly associated with nationalism and authoritarianism. Totalitarian ideologies, such as Nazism, used the term to justify ideas of racial superiority, something Nietzsche despised. He fiercely criticized nationalism and any form of collectivism that stifled individuality. In reality, the Superman is not an ideal for everyone. It is a call for the few who have the courage to live without certainties, to face chaos, and to find meaning on their own. Nietzsche did not offer a formula for the Superman, only an invitation to abandon old constraints and become the author of one's own story. Friedrich Nietzsche's life was marked by profound isolation. Although he was an extraordinary thinker, his intellectual audacity often placed him at odds with the values of his time, and even with the people around him. This distance, both physical and emotional, shaped his work and legacy, but also exacted a devastating toll. Nietzsche was born into a deeply religious family, with his father serving as a Lutheran pastor. However, he lost his father during childhood and was raised under the strong feminine influence of his mother and sister, who clung to Christian morals that Nietzsche would later wholly reject as an adult. He grew up as a brilliant young man, deeply dedicated to his studies, but always an outsider, someone who saw the world differently and felt misunderstood because of it. His academic career began early. At the age of 24, he became a professor of classical philology at the University of Basel. Nevertheless, Nietzsche never felt entirely at ease in academia. He despised the bureaucracy and formalism of educational institutions, preferring a life of solitary reflection. He left the university in 1879, partly due to his declining health, but also because he longed for a freer life to dedicate himself to philosophy. Nietzsche's solitude was compounded by his health issues. He suffered from severe migraines, vision problems, and other ailments that plagued him throughout his life. He spent much of his productive years in isolation, traveling between small towns in Switzerland, Italy, and France in search of milder climates that might ease his suffering. Despite these challenges, his physical struggles did not hinder his intellectual output. On the contrary, they may have deepened his capacity for introspection and his perspective on suffering as an unavoidable and even necessary part of human existence. On a personal level, Nietzsche faced another form of isolation, rejection in his relationships. He fell in love with Lou Andreas Salome, a brilliant writer and intellectual, but his proposal of marriage was declined. This rejection, along with his estrangement from his sister and the loss of close friendships, such as with Richard Wagner, magnified his sense of loneliness. As the years passed, his ideas grew more radical, and the public grew increasingly hostile. He was regarded as a madman and a blasphemer, someone who attacked everything society held sacred. His work was virtually ignored during his lifetime, with only a handful of copies sold. Nietzsche did not live to see the profound impact his ideas would have on the 20th century and beyond. In 1889, Nietzsche suffered a mental breakdown in Turin, Italy. It is said that the trigger was an incident where he attempted to protect a horse being whipped, a gesture many interpret as a symbol of his deep empathy, despite his fierce critiques of humanity. Following this collapse, Nietzsche spent his final years in a state of dementia, cared for first by his mother and later by his sister. Nietzsche's solitude, however, did not entirely destroy him. He transformed his isolation into fuel for his work, and it may be precisely because of this that he understood so well the cost of defying the world. More than a century after his death, Nietzsche remains one of the most debated and controversial figures in philosophy. His ideas challenged not only the values of his time, but also those that still underpin the modern world. Despite his works being distorted and misunderstood, Nietzsche remains relevant because his critiques of religion, morality, and conformity continue to touch on wounds that have not fully healed. In an increasingly secular world, the phrase, "God is dead," resonates in new and unsettling ways. Nietzsche saw the death of God not as a victory, but as a problem. Without the moral framework provided by religion, what would guide humanity? For him, the answer did not lie in new ideologies that simply replaced faith, but in the courage to create individual values. However, this requires strength and responsibility, qualities not everyone is willing to embrace. This difficulty remains a pressing issue today. In times of uncertainty, many seek ready-made answers, whether political, religious, or ideological, precisely the kind of mentality Nietzsche challenged. Another aspect that makes Nietzsche contemporary is his critique of the herd morality. In an era marked by social media and the constant pursuit of external validation, his warning about the dangers of conformity is more relevant than ever. Nietzsche believed that by following what is popular or comfortable, humanity abandons its authenticity and becomes a prisoner of values it did not choose. He challenges us to reflect. Are we living according to our own convictions, or are we merely going along with society's flow? Moreover, his vision of nihilism, the feeling that life lacks intrinsic purpose, anticipated one of the great existential challenges of modernity. In a world where old values are questioned and certainties become scarce, many find themselves lost. Nietzsche offered no easy solutions, but his philosophy proposed a way out, to embrace chaos and transform the void into an opportunity for creation. This message continues to inspire those seeking meaning in an increasingly fragmented world. Nietzsche also disturbs because he is not a philosopher of ready-made answers. His ideas do not console but provoke, destabilize, and force the reader to think for themselves. He did not want to be followed as a guru. He wanted each individual to become their own creator of values. This absolute freedom, however, comes at a price: the need to face life without illusions, with courage and responsibility. But are we ready to live in the world Nietzsche envisioned, a world without absolutes, where truth is constructed rather than found? This is the question he leaves us with. Perhaps the discomfort we feel when confronting his ideas is proof of his relevance. Nietzsche did not seek easy answers. He wanted to teach us how to ask the right questions. If you've made it this far, I must say, thank you for taking the time to dive into the fascinating and challenging mind of Friedrich Nietzsche. It's always an intense journey to explore ideas that question so much, but at the same time, invite us to see life from another perspective. Nietzsche used to say, "Those who dance are considered insane by those who cannot hear the music." If you've stayed until the end, perhaps like me, you can also hear that melody that provokes, inspires, and unsettles. I remember once, many years ago, when I read Thus Spoke Zarathustra for the first time. It felt as though every page was a slap in the face. But curiously, when I closed the book, I felt more alive than ever. Nietzsche has that power. He knocks you down, but also gives you reasons to get back up. And if there's one thing I've learned from him, it's that living is creating, even in chaos. Especially in chaos. Perhaps you felt something similar today. Now, a heartfelt request, with a touch of humor to lighten the philosophical mood. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. It's the kind of thing even Nietzsche might approve of. After all, he understood the value of social validation. Oh, and subscribe to the channel. I promise you'll find more reflections here that challenge the obvious. And of course, leave a comment. Which of Nietzsche's ideas made you think the most? I'm curious to know what resonated with you. Before you go, I have 2 videos to suggest, but I won't spoil the surprise. Let's just say they'll take you down unexpected paths, paths Nietzsche would have loved to explore. So click and discover. Who knows, the next question to turn your world upside down might be waiting there. See you in the next video. Until then, keep dancing to the rhythm of ideas that few can hear.